A median is a line that can be found inside of a triangle. It is formed between a vertex and the midpoint of the opposite side. So I want you to think of a median starting with the letter M, and M is for midpoint. So looking at the diagram, if I want to draw the median from vertex A, then I will start at A, and the opposite side is BC. So I need to find the midpoint of BC. And if I connect those two coordinates, then that is my median. So for the steps to determine the equation of the median, if M is for midpoint, step 1 is to determine the midpoint. And after that, it is just a grade 9 skill of finding the equation of the line using 2 points. And those 2 points are the original vertex that is given, so in this scenario A, and the midpoint that you just calculated. The other 2 vertices of the triangle, I don't care about them anymore. So using those 2 points, I will find the slope using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And once I have my slope, I can sub it in for m and y equals mx plus b. And then I'll sub in another point to find my y-intercept, which is b. So let's get started with an actual example. So in triangle dog, we have 3 coordinates, and we want to find the median from vertex D. So make sure you read it carefully. Now for this scenario, we will plot these points just to get the visual. So coordinate D is at 4, 0. Coordinate O is at negative 5, 2. And G is at 1, 4. And now if I just connect these coordinates, I have my triangle. And now we know from reading the question carefully that we are starting at coordinate D, which means the opposite side is OG, and we will require the midpoint of OG. So we already know that that is our first step, midpoint of OG. And to find the midpoint, we are just taking the coordinates of O and G and averaging them. So I'm going to take the x's, which are negative 5 and 1, and I'm going to add them and divide by 2. Then I'll take my y coordinates, which are 2 and 4, and I'll add them and divide by 2. So then you can do this in multiple steps, or you can do it all at once. But for my x coordinate, negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4, and when I divide that by 2, I get negative 2. And for my y coordinate, 2 plus 4 is 6, and when I divide that by 2, I get 3. And then I can use my visual just to make sure that seems about correct. And if we look at where I roughly estimated the midpoint, it is perfect. And now I am just trying to find the equation of the line using D and this midpoint. So I'm going to write coordinate D right beside, so 4, 0, and these 2 coordinates, negative 2, 3, and 4, 0, that's what I'm going to use. I can completely forget about O and G at this point. So anytime I want y equals mx plus b, my first step is to figure out my slope. So I'm going to use lowercase m for slope, and now I am just doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if you like labeling your points, it doesn't matter which one's the 1 coordinate, which one's the 2 coordinate. But now y2 0 minus y1 3 over x2 4 minus x1 negative 2. So be careful with that double negative. And now we can clean up. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. 4 minus negative 2 becomes 4 plus 2, which is 6. And make sure if you can reduce your slope, you reduce it. And our slope is negative 1/2, which means right now I have the equation y equals negative 1/2 x plus b. And now we have to sub in a point for x and y to isolate for b afterwards. Now it doesn't matter, you can either use your midpoint or you can use vertex D. Again, do not touch O or G at all. We are done with them. If you look at our visual here, if this is our median, this median has nothing to do with O and G anymore. It is all about the midpoint and that original vertex they gave us. So I'm just going to sub in my midpoint. So I'm going to put 3 in for y. And because I'm multiplying by a fraction, I'm going to take that x coordinate, which is -2, and put it over 1. And now I'm just going to multiply my slope with the x coordinate. And remember, when you multiply fractions, you multiply the numerators and then multiply the denominators. So -1 times -2 is 2, and 2 times 1 is 2. And I'm going to reduce that, which is just 1. And now I can bring the 1 over to finish isolating for b. And remember, when you bring something over, change the sign. So my y coordinate is 2. So now I can put it all together to write my final equation, and that is y equals -1/2 x plus 2. And there we go. That's our median. So median makes you think of midpoint, so we first found our midpoint. After that, it is just grade 9. I recommend, after you find your midpoint, put the starting vertex right beside it so you don't accidentally use the wrong coordinates, and then just find your slope, use the slope and a point, find your y-intercept. So let's go to our last example here. So I gave you 3 coordinates for triangle ABC, and I want to find the median from A. So I am going to do a quick sketch here. It's not going to be accurate, but I just want to draw a little triangle to guide my steps, A, B, C. And looking at this, and the fact that I know I'm starting at A, that guides my first step of, oh, I need the midpoint of BC. So if you would like, you can pause the video right here, try to find the equation of the median using the steps that we just did above, and then you can come back to the video to check your work. Otherwise, I will get started. So I need the midpoint of BC. So I'm going to take the x and the y coordinates, and I'm going to average them. So -2 plus 0 divided by 2, -2 plus -4 divided by 2. And when we clean this up, -2 plus 0 is -2, divided by 2 is -1. -2 plus -4 is -6, divided by 2 is -3. So there's my midpoint, and vertex A is 6, 8. These are the 2 points I will be using to find the equation of my median. So anytime I want the equation, step 1 is slope. So y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. I used A as my second coordinate and the midpoint as my first coordinate. I just didn't label x1, y1, x2, y2, but you're more than welcome to do that. And now when I clean up, 8 plus 3 is 11, 6 plus 1 is 7, which means at this point, our equation is y equals 11 over 7x plus b. And now we can sub either the midpoint or our vertex A. And I'm going to sub vertex A in just because both coordinates are positive and I want to use that. So instead of y, I'll put 8. And instead of x, I will put 6 over 1 because my slope is a fraction. And now again, I'll multiply my numerators. So 11 times 6 is 66. 7 times 1 is 7. Now I know that I'm going to bring this fraction over, and it's going to become subtraction. And in order for me to subtract 2 numbers, I need a common denominator. And this 8 right now is over 1. But I want it to be over 7 so that I can subtract my numerators, which means I'm going to multiply top and bottom by 7. So 8 times 7 is 56, and then 7 times 1 is 7. And I'm going to bring that 66 over 7 over, and it becomes negative. And now I will subtract my numerators only. So 56 minus 66 is -10. My common denominator stays as 7. And there's my y-intercept. It's not a nice fraction. It's not a nice whole number, but that's okay. Our numbers don't have to be pretty anymore. So now we can write our equation. Y equals our slope minus the y-intercept, and there we go. Now, one quick note I want to make here. Notice in this step, I did not cross out my 7s and just do 56 minus 66. Remember, you can only cross out your denominators when every single term here is over 7, and my b was not over 7. If you wanted to use that idea of crossing out the common denominators, I have to rewrite b as 7b over 7, and then you can use that. But I did not, I just did a common denominator and subtracted my 2 terms, and that was it. Now, before I end this video, just a little fun fact about your medians. If you draw all 3 medians in a triangle, they connect at a point called the centroid. And this point is the center of gravity of a triangle. So if I were to put a pencil on that centroid and my triangle was lying flat, it would balance very nicely. So I'm just gonna do a little sketch to show you what that centroid would look like. So let's say that's my triangle. I'm gonna draw my first median here, my second median, and my third median. Now I just did it roughly, but here is the centroid. And if you're given 3 coordinates of a triangle, you can solve for this centroid, because the centroid is just the point of intersection between your 3 medians. So once you find the equation of 2 of your medians, you can solve for the point of intersection using substitution or elimination. So I'm going to make a little note of that. Solve using substitution or elimination. So a nice connection here to linear systems. And if you wanted to, you can find your third median as well, just to do a left side, right side check on to make sure that is in fact your centroid. And that's it for medians.